Okay, apologies for that. Phone went off, and I cannot remember where I was. I think I was describing functions. Right. So there's two things. So, all right. This bit of syntax here is the same syntax as if you were to call some other function that you've created, like the shorter hint. Shorter hint is a function that I've called up there. It just pops a hint up on your screen, waits for 4 seconds, and then replaces the hint with an empty string, which just makes the hint box go away. So instead of lingering for 30 seconds or however long it does, it just pops up for that. It has a single parameter, which is just a string of the text that you send in, and it defines it there as text, so that this text down here is what it's calling to. So if you were to call shorter hints, you would have to put a string in there like shut up, and then shut up would be passed into this function as a parameter. It will get the parameter it will get the variable name of underscore text, and then you can just use it anywhere else. So if you wanted to call another hint with just say you noob, then the first shut up goes through. It gets defined as a local variable. That's what that little underscore before it means. It means that outside of this context, so like if I go down here and say text, I like just say hint text, which is same thing as shorter hint, but just for the full 30 seconds. That will return an error because we are outside of the context of this particular shorter hint. As soon as this little thing here, it ignores every other thing. It ignores wherever else that text would be because it's no longer the parameter that goes inside of this function. It's outside. It is no longer local. So locality gets tricky when you get clients and servers because now this bit of code is not local to the client that is connecting to the server because it's only running on the server. So if I were to define something here like is the base boosted, and I don't put a question mark in there and I put that as true, if I were to down here call on, if I just wanted to say like if is the base boosted, that is going to error out on every client that connects, and there's I need like a then code there to actually finish out that if statement, but that's going to error out on every client because is the base boosted, while it is technically a global variable in this context, it's only local to the server, so everyone's going to get an error except for the server. So you'll want to, watch out on your locality. I should eventually get to the difference between spawn and call. Arma has a system that I'm trying to remember what it's called exactly, but it's basically just a list of instructions that it does. So this physics object moves a little bit, and there's like a stack, or I don't think it's a stack because there's probably a very specific name for the data structure that it is, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there is a difference between calling something and spawning something. When you spawn something, it gets put into this list of actions to do, and the server or the client or whoever is currently running that code will get around to it whenever they can. So, your computer can do a couple billion things per second, so it can take care of a lot of things, but sometimes, you're running a whole bunch of code and you want to make sure that's all taken care of, and then you can run this code whenever. So spawning is how you do that. If you spawn a bit of code, the code that happens in here will be run when its turn comes up. It is added to the list of things to do, and eventually this will run. But it might not run immediately, and it might not run exactly when you want it to. So there's a little bit of finagling to go there, but generally speaking, it makes sure the FPS doesn't drop. Calling is different. Calling says, run me now. this code, when it gets to, is run immediately. It's not put on any other stack to be run later. It is not, given, I think it's a priority queue. I want to say the ARMA data structure that I'm thinking of is a priority queue, because some things get ahead of other things, but that doesn't matter. That's getting into computer science topics we don't necessarily need to get into. But calling just says, "Hey, you need to run me now." And if you do your calls improperly, you can lag your game straight to shit. You can there was code that I used to get rid of a whole lot of map objects that took a lot of time to run, and that's why you had that like 30-second run up. But I had to balance when I spawned things and when I called things, and then I also gave the server enough time, because I think when you were getting rid of objects, it got higher priority on that queue. So I had to play around with priorities and a bunch of other crap. That code is crazy, but if you are running a whole lot of if you're running a whole lot of actions, like you need to spawn 100 enemies, spawn them. Don't call them. If you call them, the server is going to grind to a halt like 2 frames per second for a good minute as it actually spawns in each of the 100 people. Whereas if you spawn them, or use this spawn command, I should really say something besides spawn them, but if you run the code within a spawn call, I don't know, then the server might not spawn all 100 of them immediately, but you will see a much less, there will be much less of a slowdown, because the server will start spawning in the people once it's got enough cycles to go do that. So it will wait for its turn to come up and it won't affect, so there is less of an effect on FPS. And I'll put a star in there, because you can still bog down a server if you spawn things, and the fun thing about this is you can spawn a call, you can call functions within functions. You can do that, so be aware that even though this code will run when its turn has come up, when you run the code, everything's being called, so you might start lagging things out after you've spawned it. And only spawning things, they might not ever happen. I think I just deleted it, but I'm pretty sure the code that I used for the flares that the Canadians sent out, they spawned everything. So that was just going to run whenever it had the opportunity to. I think there might have been one too many AI running in that particular mission, because they didn't really get around to it within like a good 30 minutes or something like that, or it was so low on the price. Like occasionally some would be in there. I'm still figuring out how exactly that screwed up. So spawning and calling, when you get into, if you get into scripting, you should get into scripting. Scripting gives you a lot more fine control over what's actually happening within your missions. You don't necessarily have to, but do keep in mind that all of these little, when you right click on something and go into attributes, come on, if you actually hit attributes, this little init box, this is also a little SQF that I can put, I can't actually call shorter hint here, because remember earlier how I said, so these init codes get called first, and then this init gets called. So you have to, if you need to define things that will show up here, you have to do that fun thing in the description where I have things pre-init. So the init arsenal.sqf is thrown into a class, and that is to be compiled before the inits in this, because I think it's these inits go first and then your mission inits come after. So yeah, be careful if you're defining a function, and this is why I'm doing everything within these init files, because I can't use any of the functions that I've defined in the code that I've already written here, because they aren't pre-computed. So I am trying to remember the part of the Biki where this is all explained. I think it's load order. Mod folders, no, shoot, what is it? There is a good there's a good article on the Wiki about this, and if you're getting into anything more complex than just popping stuff on a map, then you'll want to know that. I'm just throwing it in here because I'm trying to, make time and think about everything else that you would want to initially do, because there's a lot of interesting things you can do in the code. Just, figuring shit out and then dropping in, like, the calorical or wherever that is. Because I think, yeah, make drug oracle just takes in the object. So that parameter is just the object, and then you add an action to it, which is a little bit of code that I could probably separate that out and have that be its own thing. But yeah, no, that just actually it does spawn. Oh, I think that's why. Hold on. I'm running this code on the client. I think I could call it. I'm now starting to understand. Okay, so there was a bug that I couldn't really get my head around where okay, hold on. Go trip hard. Go trip hard does have a sleep in there, so I actually do need to spawn that. There was a timing issue that I had earlier where sometimes the text wouldn't appear when you were tripping on the calorical. And I think that might be because I was spawning it, but I gotta look into that more. But having a think, since I'm thinking about the difference between call and spawn and doing such things. Let's see. What else? This two-part video, because the phone call interrupted me, is just gonna be about like the considerations to have before you make a mission. So I need to think about if there's anything else you need to do before the mission. We've got our respawn areas. Let's see if I can take apart, because arsenals are pretty important. And let's focus on just... Okay, so this is the important part here. I like to add this action so that you can use your scroll mouse wheel to access the arsenal, but this is the most important part of the arsenal. This is, you need to have an object here. So right now this is part of a function, and this parameter is the Jack Shack that you've got on it. So I can just say, you saw this in the init here. I just take Jack Shack 1 and I call the function make it a Hyperborea arsenal. It passes it in here, and then takes Jack Shack and player arsenal, which I have defined up here as just, it is a comma separated variable. What is this, an array? Yeah, this is just an array. This is just an array of strings of all of the classes of all the things that you can put in there. That goes into that second part, and then you call ace arsenal function init box, and the ace group, I go arma ace arsenal, the ace group should have their own framework. They have their own ace3 mod wiki, and this gives you all of these other little things here. So we've got add virtual. Okay, no, first you have to you have to quickly add a full ace arsenal. So yeah, if you just want to add a full ace arsenal, take this code right here. You can just copy that because you're just calling the init box function. You can go in here and just paste it and then replace box with the variable name. So in this case, it would be Jack Shack 2. That will give you a full arsenal on there. That's all you got to do. You can replace true with an array, which an array is just a open square bracket and then a string, so quotation marks, whatever it is. Make sure you're getting the class name. I'm going to delete that really quickly because I don't need that there. Make sure that for all of the items, go into here and say you want to give them the Krieg's plasma gun. That is DK underscore plasma gun. So when you are defining something like player arsenal or just a long array, you put in DK plasma gun, or DK underscore plasma gun, not Krieg plasma gun. Yeah, TIOW underscore Gauss flare underscore base. That's how that all happens. And so yeah, make sure you are using the class name, not the actual string name. Yeah, and I like to format, so I would say like, we'll just put example X AMPLE. There we go. Example array is, here's how I like to format them. It's currently not formatted how I like, but I like to just put an enter in there and then tab that and then first item, comma, then just spread them out like that and make sure that last comma isn't there because you do not need a comma at the end of it. And so that just kind of gives it in a nice list format and not, you know, all one line like it is up here. And if I were to go to my loot tables, I think in the loot system, yeah, if I go way down here, all of my loot tables and like the ruins that get replaced things, the list of props that you put on camps, I've got all of these nice and aligned up so I can be like, okay, what's all going into the medical loot rare table? Surgical kit, splint, plasma, radaway, auto-inject stim packs, like all of those go in there. And it's nice and much easier to read. Except when I make arrays of arrays, like in the gun civilian list here, which is one array that contains a list of other arrays, and each array has two things. But you know, you do these as you can, and don't look at the rest of this. It's gross. Oh my god, arrays within arrays. But these are all the loot tables. If you're reading this is a huge spoiler, by the way. Here is, I'm trying to scroll fast so you don't get too much of it, but that is, if there is a random loot box on the ground, those are all the chances that you could get any such sort items. So that's a huge spoiler. Loot system's really complicated, as you can tell. Without all the tables, it is about 150 lines of code, so don't worry about it. I spent way too much time on that. We're just going over the basics of getting a mission set up. Okay, we've got respawns, we've got initial spawn positions. Let's see. One thing you're going to want to do if you are, I think if you're running this like here, like you can go into play in multiplayer and then, hold on. If I have to take down the server that I'm currently running over LA, or over the local area network. So if I do that, you have a server running in the background, you want to shut it down. Yes, that's gonna actually, okay, well I have to wait for a loading screen really quickly. Come on. Anytime now. There we go. Okay, so that's all loaded. These people all spawn because it's single player. Don't worry about that. If they're set to playable, they shouldn't normally spawn. Okay. But if you want to run, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend this because it messes with the, you can't quite, like, it's weird. You can't play, I don't think it shows up on, like, your Steam's friends list, but you can still direct connect, or I've got issues doing it this way. But you can, if you want to, click on this little internet tab here, put a funny name here, and then make sure you have access to those ports, 2302 and 2303. If your router has universal plug and play, so if you've got a universal, the UPnP or IGD enabled router, click that. You don't necessarily need to. Type in your password of choice, max players, etc., and that'll be a server. If you click OK, that will open up a server to the public, and people can connect to it, and it will go to the like as soon as you type that in, it'll go to role assignment, and then it'll be open and people can connect to it, and that will run whatever mission you've got going in the background. So that is something you can do if you want to. And if you screw something up, you can always, like, there's, people will stay connected to the server. So if I had opened that server up to the internet and someone had connected, even though I'm currently on this screen right now, they're still in the server. They'll just have a black screen. They won't see anything until you decide to hit play in multiplayer again, and then role selection will then just appear on their screen as well. So that server's open, and whoever could connect to it over my local area network, since I set it to local area network, they could, and then they could sit around as I build this mission out. So like if you forget something at the last minute, or like, oh hey, the respawns aren't working, I need to fix that real quick, just tell everyone to chill, look at the black screen, don't panic, and they can do that. And then as soon as you're done and you hit that play game again, they will go and do that. Alright, let's see. Something I've been meaning to play with, but I haven't yet, is locations. So if you notice over here on the map, there is Nordheimske Grubelskab. If I don't like that, like, I think you can... I think these are map-based. I don't think you can edit these, but I've been meaning to, like, I think these are just, shortcuts. So if you do something close to the Skrevdal, or Skrivmo is where we're going, right? So yeah, if I'm like way over here and I'm playing around with the with this bunker in the sky over here, and I don't feel like going to the map and crawling over their locations, Skrivmo, boom. I swear though, you could probably, like, I could have sworn you can change the names on that or something like that, but I could be wrong. Because they are based on, like, this Skrivmo thing is, if you double click on it, this camera looks at, remember how the text kind of goes to the right of the icon? So the icon is invisible here, the text is to the right of it, and your camera is pointing pretty much directly at it, but it's invisible because it's just there to define this area. So... yeah, that point is right there on that house, and you can see it is. If I ever figure out how to change that, and I think you gotta, I think you have to make a mod to do that because you're changing the map file itself. But it's possible, but it's hard. But that's there if you want to, you know. There's a bunch of shortcuts that the map maker can give you if they so choose. Anything else? I think I'll cut it here just because I've already been going for about an hour and a half with a phone call. So next, we will be looking at objective number 1, which the players should naturally come around to. Like, you know, you gotta... sometimes you have those kind of players who will look at this open road and say, nah, man, let's go this way, and just go this way and get lost. Or like worst case scenario, they go straight north from here and like hit Totokun or something and just kind of bypass everything. Hopefully your players have a ludic sense about them and just, you know, follow the road. But every now and then, yeah, and also just design considerations. Make sure you don't put anything too, or like, if there is something interesting, like if there was a building over here, players might want to get out and loot it, especially because this is kind of the looting sort of a game. So I might just, you know, go into environment, hide terrain objects, and just hide that so they have a much more boring drive in. And I did want to try and make this, yeah, this is good enough. You know what? It's a nice valley you're driving down from it. It's enough of a vista. Yeah, the vista is one of those old Valve design contexts, or at least the one they defined in their what is that called? The voiceover, where you can press E on the little floating talk bubbles in order to get developer commentary. That's it, developer commentary. But you do want to have a Vista moment, just so players kind of know what they're getting into. And right now, I was kind of hoping that, like, I don't know, maybe I should put something distracting over here. If I put something on this rock that they would want to get out and investigate, they would naturally come over to this rock and see this whole valley with, like, you know, houses and stuff and think, huh, civilization, inhabited areas. And it would give them a moment to kind of think, and this would put them in the mood of what we're hoping to do here, which is to say, don't just shoot people on sight, even though this is Arma. So, you know, we've been going through harsh winter, destroyed buildings, rubble everywhere, and yeah, when you're not quite at this vista, you still see mountains, maybe a little bit of grass. You're thinking, oh, huh, this is a little bit more temperate. You got these destroyed ruins, and just past the destroyed ruins, you can actually see, you know, intact buildings. What's going on here? Who knows? Maybe we shouldn't shoot on sight. And I want to encourage that. But I'm starting to get into designing this first mission, so we are going to do that in the next video.